Good evening and welcome to episode. Hi. Try again. Good evening, welcome to Momentous Live. And you can tell it's live because of stuff like that. Episode 74. I'm Tristan Jutra.
I'm Tasia Custodi.
I'm William Silver.
And I'm Gray Williams. And welcome to Momentous Live. Woo! We did it.
Yay! Yeah, that was an accident. So that's how this is going to go.
74 episodes and we're still doing junk like that.
Exactly.
We'll get it one day.
Yeah.
Episode 100, I can feel it.
We have a slightly different background here in my end of things. Momentous HQ is on the road today. Instead of black, we've got, what is that, dark tan? Is that desert burnt puce? I don't know. Broadcasting live from Kelowna. Please come rob my house. And we've got lots of fun stuff.
He lives at 7132 Evergreen Terrace.
Exactly.
Is that in Springfield?
Is that a real place?
Probably.
So today we're going to be talking about. Well, we've got a couple of follow-up stories. We're going to, Google. We're going to have bad Google. We're going to have bad Apple. We're going to have maybe bad Amazon, scary robots, and a whole bunch of animals, if you believe birds are real, and other things. So let's get right to it with a quick little bit of follow-up. So what is time? Last year sometime we were talking about the Analogue Pocket, which is a retro portable game console, and using FPGAs, field programmable gate arrays, I believe, as part of an open FPGA initiative, really making it's kind of like emulation, but not really. We won't get into the details too much, but the shape was kind of like a Game Boy, nice big bright screen, and a lot of people interested in this. So there's been a lot of sort of products like this, a lot of cheap and cheerful stuff out of China that would come preloaded with a ton of, say, like Game Boy games or Game Boy Color games or Game Boy Advance games. This one is a little classier, really nice design, high quality, and we were drooling it over a little bit last year. One of the things we were speculating about was what might the community do to help make more games available for this. And now we're at software version 1.1, a patch whereby anyone in the open source community can build hardware emulation cores to make the Analogue Pocket mimic nearly any gaming and computer system up until the early 90s. Now, Gray, you have a device that we're going to be talking about a little later on, but given that you're in that portable gaming space, retro modern gaming space at the moment, what's the significance in your mind of this update, opening up the platform a little bit?
Well, essentially, it allows you to turn this thing into almost anything that you want it to be within reason as far as emulation goes. And where we've seen in the past, where we've been focused on like purely software emulation of various hardware pieces, it's never really been particularly. There have always been issues, things like timing, things like getting certain pieces of code that were written for certain processors to be emulated by software that just wasn't really designed to do it. So this here is kind of it's a bit of a big deal. We're looking at things like Neo Geo. Neo Geo famously was an incredibly powerful system with these absolutely massive games. And so this is it's kind of an exciting thing to see the community go back and work on stuff like this. It's fascinating to see because a good friend of mine, Johan, worked on some games, and he actually posted on his Facebook the other day that used copies of some of these games were going for hundreds of dollars, and he's like, I still have a few sealed in the wrapper. Because again, some of these games have never been emulated. Some of them, you can't find physical copies of anywhere. And famously, over the last 10 years, we've seen companies pop up with e-stores, and then they'll pull their product. Nintendo's great for doing this. This is available, and we're going to pull the e-store. We're going to pull the actual software version to drive this sort of Disney-like idea of the vault. And I think it's this here. In a lot of cases, we're looking at games where these ROMs typically are not available by legal means, which is what it is.
Do your own research.
if you don't make something available to consumers, consumers are still going to find a way to consume it. Gabe Newell said famously that software piracy is a customer service issue. And so last year when we were looking at this, these things were not even available to buy, right? Like they were constantly sold out. So how's
we're
it
looking
looking
at
for stuff right now?
2023 at the moment for next shipment. So, Will, being a Game Boy lad or Game Boy boy,
And Game
from
Gear,
back
by
in
the way.
day, and Game Gear, nice Sega Game Gear. At these systems at $220 US plus $30 US for the various adapters, Game Gear, Neo Geo, Atari Lynx, TurboGrafx 16, and so on. How interested are you at those sorts of price points for getting into this ecosystem and reliving a little bit of your misspent youth?
Oh, this is my jam. I mean, this is my jam right here. I mean, I totally dig this. I love the aesthetic. I love the idea. I just to sort of reiterate what you guys were both saying. One of the biggest problems I have with ROMs or emulation, especially sort of when you see like 100 games or like 1,000 games, is that like you said, Tristan, it might not fully, work properly or be designed for the chipset or the processor, what have you. I remember there was a double dragging on iOS platforms, and it was really laggy. It was like practically unplayable. I was so psyched to download it, and it was a complete waste of money. But the other thing too is that a lot of these things aren't set up to play with a cross pad and two buttons, right? So that can be a problem. External controllers are necessary. There's even things, obviously, that require, like track and field, that require the ball. There's all sorts of games out there that have got different input devices. So in some ways, it's best to pick on things like Game Boy, Game Gear, that were designed for these mobile platforms. So that would be the thing if I was to get one that I would focus on. Obviously, it's cool. Neo Geo, like Gray said, was well known for, in the 90s for being some of the best graphics in the arcades. But also the Neo Geo system was an absolute beast, kicking the pants off of the Genesis and the SNES at the time. But yeah, that's sort of some random thoughts. But yeah, I would definitely go after things that would be better suited for a platform like this, rather than just try to go, let's get some N64 games that have triggers and bumpers and all sorts of things, and let's try to emulate them and put them on here. So yeah, that would be kind of my idea with it.
And Tasia, being the not so much gaming enthusiast that you are, I trust you have no thoughts on this.
Nope.
Alrighty. So, but we'll put on Will's wish list for 2023. He's got a birthday.
Yes.
Next fall.
I do have birthdays every year, I think.
Well, hopefully we'll keep them coming. Another quick follow-up. A few weeks ago now, we talked about the Google AI researcher, Blake Lemoine, who had been suspended and then eventually fired for releasing transcripts of conversations that he was having with Google LaMDA, the natural language AI system. And then there was the whole debate. He claimed that, it's sentient, it's a person, et cetera, and there's a big debate about that. Well, latest update in that story is there some Stanford University AI experts have basically called BS on his claims that the LaMDA chatbot is actually sentient, and the quote being, LaMDA is not sentient for the simple reason that it does not have the physiology to have sensations and feelings. It is a software program designed to produce sentences in response to sentence prompts. And obviously the power with, being powered by Google, has access to so much language that's ever been shared on the internet. So it can do a good job of deceiving us. Tasia, how disappointed are you that some of these experts in the field are throwing cold water on the notion that LaMDA may have actually been sentient? Are you disappointed that you're missing out on the opportunity to have a true friend?
I mean, you're saying that the technology we built is not a real being. It's just like we talked about this a few weeks ago. Like, this was the hill he wanted to die on for some reason. I don't know why. This was the point, and it is the point of what LaMDA is and what they want LaMDA to be. They want it to provide users with a more conversational experience. Like, you really do have a virtual assistant as opposed to the set bank of answers right now. So, like, this is the whole point. We want it to adapt to what you're saying and be able to pivot the conversation in a more natural way, like you and I would talk with each other, as opposed to just a narrow route of asking one question, getting one answer. So it's wild to me that the very thing he was helping to build, he then fell for in terms of like thinking it was sentient. And I don't know. I just have, what was that movie where he fell in love with the robot, like with the virtual assistant? Yes. I just have a lot of her vibes right now. So
I could see Joaquin Phoenix playing this dude actually in a upcoming biopic. So that's definitely doable. One of the other comments from said researchers were that it was pure clickbait being published in a sort of a normie sort of publication like the Washington Post, because most of the readers wouldn't be sophisticated enough to recognize these absurd claims for what they actually are. So, I mean, you ask why is he dying on this particular hill, Tasia? Maybe there were some other issues going on with his job there, and he figured he could go out in a blaze of glory and end up making money on the speaking circuit.
True.
Gray?
I'm just going to say it's missing the physiology. It's a bit of a cop-out, isn't it? Because when you think about it, our physiology basically just takes sensory input, converts it into electrical impulses that are processed by our brain. And so essentially it is just the processing of electrical data really at the end of the day. And when we start to think about all of the IoT systems out there right now, the vast majority of which have some sort of sensor involved in them somehow. So looking at this system, was this thing isolated? Is it a virtual machine that's living inside a box that you could unplug virtually from the internet? Is it distributed across a content distribution network? Like, where does this thing live? Where does the software live? Where does it run? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? Because if it's just literally I'm feeding it text, cool. But have you connected anything else to it? Is it possible that you have some sort of sensory input? Why is it that I'm talking like Tucker Carlson? I don't know. I'm just asking questions.
I have seen you wear a bow tie before.
He's clearly the evil one. I'm clearly, or I don't. Anyway, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's really is that actually a point of contention? Sure that this doesn't have the physiology, but are they then claiming that in order to have any form of sentience, you need to have like wetware? Like you need to have an organic brain. Can an electronic brain ever achieve sentience? I mean, that's the stuff of science fiction and whatnot. And I don't think we're going to solve it tonight. So let's move along from our. Let's see how much time we got. Let's move on from our follow-up to a couple of news stories we have this week. Google sued after pulling free Workspace tools for early adopters. So apparently we've got a multi-million-dollar lawsuit coming down for luring early Workspace adopters to use its services during the initial testing stages in return for free lifelong access. So this was a system that was initially known as Google Apps and G Suite and so on. And of course includes professional versions of Gmail, Google Calendar, Docs, Sheets, Slides, and extra paid extras like cloud storage via Google Drive. So this is another case of, you get something for free and then it goes away and you're upset. But it sounds like some of these early adopters were being promised lifelong access. Now, Tasia, you are a devoted Google user, it seems, from the content of a lot of your videos. Not that you accept everything that they say blindly, unless, of course, they're sending you product to review. Now, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Is this a bait and switch by Google Workspace? Do people actually have a concern, or are they? Is this a big old nothing burger, as they say?
I mean, it is based in merit, this lawsuit. but add it to the list of a bunch of lawsuits on their plate for this year alone. But like, I feel 50-50 about it. It was, to me, it was the same thing when, they started saying we're going to charge for Google Photos, that was like always free. And my response was, well, duh, I can't believe you didn't do that years ago. Like, but people lost their minds. Now, the difference here, so it's like, I get it from the business perspective. The difference here is if you did promise users something like the early adopters, and to be clear, this is like, we're talking about a business suite right now. So most people that are just casual Gmail users don't have Workspace, so this probably doesn't concern them. But it's like, if you were promised that, I mean, I'd be a little ticked that, now I'm ingrained in the ecosystem. I store all of my stuff in the ecosystem, and now I'm being forced to pay.
That's how they get you.
I know. And so it's like, I don't know that I necessarily would like file a lawsuit, but I feel like I'd be pretty ticked and like would probably talk to you guys about it and be like, can you believe this bunch of bull?
Bastards.
Does that make sense? Like, I mean, I do think it's based in merit though. So like, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Like, I get it, but did they really have to go back on their word,
It's interesting. I wonder if this will push some folks, some of these business users, to explore other options like Microsoft 365, or even something like Zoho, which a friend of the show, Andy Barrar, actually did a video on this a few days ago, where he went down to Austin, Texas. Zoho was having a big old shindig there, and there's lots of interesting aspects of it. But they're a huge suite. They're based in India, but they have a huge suite of tools for the very same types of purposes here. So it'd be interesting to see what the potential fallout might be from this. And Gray, I think you and I agree, the Google tool that we most missed, that wasn't what they didn't start asking money for it. If they had started asking money for it, we might have paid for it. They just outright killed it, and that would be
Google Reader.
Indeed.
It was awesome.
Or another one.
You know what? They burned me then, and that was they one and done. One and done. So never again.
No more shall we commit to Google free apps. Well, I mean, that's always the risk. I mean, there's risk when you're even with paid services too, but it seems like a lot of free services, especially when they don't have a proper business model, you never know how long it's actually going to last.
Do you remember that service that you scanned your card and somebody typed it out? That was free. And it was like, how is that a sustainable business model, that they're sending my picture to someone and there's an actual person typing out the business card?
That's called labor cost arbitrage, I think, in that case. But I love that app. I used it like crazy, Card Munch, and then they got bought. And the great thing about Card Munch is that it would scan the details. You scan the card, it would insert your details into an item, that VCF card that you can import into your contacts, and you could also include some notes about like where and when you met that person. And then they got bought by LinkedIn, but the information would integrate with LinkedIn. It was so nice, and then LinkedIn just killed it. It's like, come on. Like, they say, there's reasons why we can't have nice things. Well, one of the reasons we can't have nice things is companies give up on them and kill them because they don't make money for them, serve their interest, which I get. I mean, they're not a charity, but come on, guys. Don't even get me started. In other Google news, Google tries publicly shaming Apple for into adopting RCS. RCS being Rich Communication Service, the supposedly the successor to SMS, Simple Messaging Service, and which evolved into MMS, Multimedia Messaging Service. And then RCS was supposed to have a lot more of the features that some of us have come to expect from services like the iMessage platform from Apple, and WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and whatnot, where you could have reactions. There's 5 or 6 different kind of emotes you could use to react to messages, and the multimedia sharing, the group messaging being a bit more robust. And of course, there's this whole blue bubble versus green bubble debate that rages on when you've got people that are all in the Apple ecosystem on the iMessage platform. When you send them text messages, Apple diverts around SMS, which is old and insecure, highly obsolete at this point, but is still supported by most carriers. And you basically uses iCloud to make that happen. But as soon as you have someone that doesn't have an Apple device, all of a sudden you get the green bubbles, and it's going back to SMS or MMS, which does not have end-to-end encryption. It down-reses images and all sorts of things. So there's there's this whole drama online about people getting bullied for forcing the group chats in the green bubbles and all this kind of stuff. And how real this actually is, it's hard to say. I'm not one of the youngs anymore, sadly. So. But Google is starting this new campaign, basically claiming that people are being bullied into getting Apple devices to get into the blue bubble clique, basically. And this resonates with some people. There's a lot of people who seem irrationally anti-Apple, which I find always amusing, because then you ask them why, and they don't really have much substance to what they're saying. It seems to be a lot of just stuff they read in headlines, as opposed to actually using the devices and the benefits of the ecosystem. And a lot of those people are equally committed to their own ecosystem. So again, don't get me started. But Gray, any thoughts on this? RCS, the RCS we're talking about here isn't even the RCS that the carriers have kind of adopted. This is Google's own flavor of RCS, which has end-to-end encryption, and it's not even widely adopted by the US, let alone Canadian characters. It's sort of our carriers. It's sort of a patchwork. Is Google justified in trying to pressure Apple into this? Because Apple's, I don't think is it even going to work? Does Apple care that much?
I don't think Apple cares that much. And there's a big thing here, right? It supports end-to-end encryption. It doesn't support end-to-end encryption in groups. And so that's something that's coming later this year. I don't think Apple is going to start to include anyone else's standard that isn't finished yet. And this is rich coming from the company that would not provide Apple with a number of features in Maps, forcing them to go build their own mapping system and suffer all of that nonsense for years. And because they're on the losing end of the messaging spectrum, they're don't do to us what we did to you. You know what, Google? You've had so much trouble making chat work on your own platforms. And you've had so much trouble getting this rolled out for all of your different vendors. And you're asking Apple to come to your rescue? Pardon me if we don't just sort of sit and watch you squirm. That's that. You know what? Get the message. Google, you had 10 years to get the message. This is not helping.
So Apple has really not much to gain by doing this, because people say, why doesn't Apple just make that Messages app for the iMessage platform on Android devices? And then people say, well, Apple doesn't want to do that because then people would have no reason to buy iPhones anymore. That feels true.
Why would I go ahead and help anybody else in this particular sphere, right? There's something that works. It works well enough. If you want the better product, you buy the better product, right? If messaging is your thing, they innovated, they built it, stick with Apple. If you want an Android phone and you want the features of iMessage, you get to choose.
I guess, like you say, Tristan, I don't get it. I'm not a kid's. I'm not a teen's. I just wouldn't feel guilted in that way. It wouldn't be like a premium feature to have a blue bubble versus a green bubble or what have you. It's to me, it seems kind of silly. I think it's about the usability of the device overall and the usability of the app specifically in this case. So I don't know. I find that argument. Yeah, I use Signal too.
Telegram or WhatsApp or Discord or Skype chat or ICQ Slack. Or Slack. Messaging, we've talked about this before, segment messaging is so fragmented. It would be nice. Yeah. I would love it if actually RCS became the de facto standard, and that if iMessage defaulted to RCS instead of SMS when you've got some non-Apple devices on there. But like you say, Gray, it would be nice for the standard to be finished and as good as the iMessage platform, so that when it does fall back, it doesn't compromise people's security and privacy and the like. Real quick, Tej, before we move to the next story, again, as someone who straddles the Apple and Google ecosystems quite a lot and even does things like test drives Android phones, what are your thoughts on this particular issue? Do you think Apple should relent in the interests of the greater good, so to speak, or what?
I just think it's kind of like a PR push, because I saw it all over my feed today. They put out a couple videos and they're using some influencers to basically try to shame Apple. But it's really funny reading this headline, because is completely different depending on what side of the coin you're on and who's writing the article. For me, actually, I like seeing who I'm talking to if they're on an Android device or on an iPhone. So I like the color difference as an aesthetic thing. However, because that just
But you wouldn't judge someone based on that. Like
I used to be like, oh, no, I'm kidding. But like,
You
like
don't
if I
judge
was
people
like,
by the color of their bubbles.
right?
That's what I
It's the
mean.
The strength of the
Right.
character.
Can we all get along?
I do think it's like a little naive of all of us to like sit here and act like this isn't even on Apple's radar, and they probably haven't been working with RCS and developing stuff for years behind the scenes. Like we're just the end consumer that's like, the new product. Like there's people working on this stuff for years. So I do think at some point we're going to see like a bit of a change in the technology, but it's like what Gray's saying, like until something is up to a certain standard and until Apple can really ensure like safety and security and make sure it's up to their standard, it's not going to happen until then, if that makes sense.
And all the while, I think they'll still continue to develop the iMessage platform and just try to make it as compelling as possible, so that even if at some point they decide to fall back to RCS as opposed to merely MMS, which is trash, that there is still a bit of an advantage to going to iMessage for people there, and let the market decide on its own. Then I can't see a day where unless Apple was compelled to by regulatory authorities, I can't see the day where they would actually go and make iMessage for Android or other platforms. It just doesn't seem likely. But falling back to RCS in a pinch, maybe that's in our futures, and that would be nice, because it's dumb when you're in a group chat with mixed platforms and you hit one of the emotes and it's like, Tristan Jutra laughed at an image. It's like, oh great, as opposed to just seeing the icon. Now what Google's been doing in their Google Chat app, correct me if I'm wrong, they've had so many different names for all their different apps, it can actually decode that metadata, and so that people on the other end will actually see an emote icon as opposed to that text. But the Apple people ironically still see the text.
Exactly, we see it, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so hopefully that will get solved within the next decade or so. We shall see.
Here's just what I want to say. This is what I'm going to finish on with iMessage. Is I am still in the camp of iMessage. To me is one of the best things to ever be invented, because when you live far away, when you have family that is all somewhere else, when people are scattered and you don't necessarily have data or stuff going on, you can always be in touch, as long as you are all on iPhone platform, you're on iOS, you can all be in touch. And I know we have things like WhatsApp now and all that kind of stuff, but it's just such a nice built-in thing. But I do wonder if I'm like in the minority of thinking that, because we have these third-party apps, like I wonder if that's really a reason like that Apple would even be concerned about, to like bring people over from the Android world into iOS. Like there's a million other features or reasons. And frankly, they get a lot of people with because they've started working on their other hardware, and then they go, well, I should really just be in the whole ecosystem. It's happening with one of my friends now, who at work, they gave her a Mac. So she, when you first go from like Windows to Mac and you're like, holy, what is this world? Yeah. So that happened. And then it was like, then she got an iPad at work, and now she's like, what phone do I get? Should I get the Pixel or should I get an iPhone? And I'm like, oh boy. So it's this whole other conversation now of like, because for her now she's getting ingrained in the Apple ecosystem. So she wants to maybe move over to an iOS phone instead. So it's kind of really interesting. Like I would just wonder, like the back end data on Apple's end, like they probably don't give a crap that Google's saying this or that there's a big PR push at all.
Yeah. And everyone knows what a pain it is to try and convince people to adopt a different third-party app like a WhatsApp or a Signal or whatever. So this just make it work, tech giants.
Because everybody's on different ones.
Yeah, I mean, talk about peer pressure. I find there's peer pressure to use different messaging apps. Like I'm on 3 or 4 different ways of communicating. And I was just talking to somebody else the other day who's in a local DJ group, scratch group, and he's like, "Oh, where's that message? Is it on this thing?" I'm like, "Oh no, you're not on the Facebook group. You're on the Slack channel, but not the WhatsApp group." It's like, why can't we all just talk on one thing? Why can't there just be one platform? Why does everyone have to start their own channel or server or what have you?
Exactly. Speaking of tech giants, in this case, instead of not working together well, they're working together real well because Amazon just bought iRobot, maker of not only domestic vacuum robot slaves, but also a certain amount of military hardware as well that people don't know about all that much. But some people are a little bit concerned about the e-commerce giant gaining even more intelligence into the interiors of our homes as the successive iterations of Roombas become smarter and smarter. Will Amazon actually go and use any data that's aggregated to learn more about us? It's like, oh wow, there's a cat litter box. Maybe we should try and start suggesting cat litter through Amazon Prime and so on and so forth. Gray, how concerned are you about this other merger and the privacy implications of Roombas, which have been quite popular for the better part of 15 years and just getting better and better as time goes on? Is this something to be concerned about?
You know, it's one of those things where I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to have an iRobot in my home here or in my next home, and this has kind of decided it for me. I think I'm actually going to go in a different direction. I know we've all kind of talked about it a little bit. Will, Tasha, did you have one of these things?
Yeah.
I never have.
And I have sharks now. And guess what? All the new ones have Wi-Fi and map your home. So the argument that it's just Amazon wanting to see in your home, like
not
all
entirely
of them
true.
do it.
There's actually quite a few of them that are
Yes, you can
not
get dumb ones.
They're not connected, and they basically just vacuum by algorithm. I've had a few of those, and those were fine. They clean the mess. I can't drive it around with my cat on top, which is unfortunate, but I'm okay with
Yes.
Yeah.
I just love the phrase vacuum by algorithm. Go ahead, Will.
The mapping is really helpful if it works properly.
Sure. I want an open source version of this.
Go ahead, Will.
I was just going to say that, this is maybe more of, I'm getting on my soapbox now. This is maybe more of a big complaint. One thing that I'm careful of is devices, as Tasia mentioned, that are connected to Wi-Fi that don't need to be. And I know the smart home is very useful. Mm-hmm. We do have a few smart home devices, but you're also opening it up for zombie attacks or what have you. And also, I just don't need extra Wi-Fi things confusing when I'm trying to connect to stuff. I mean, like I've often said I have a dishwasher with Wi-Fi in it. Why? Where's the use case for this? Why am I putting dishes in and the dish soap and walking away and turning it on or seeing the progress and I'm away? Like, why? Why is it connected to Wi-Fi?
Because you can.
So you can eventually say, "Hey Siri, wash my dishes that I just loaded."
But I have to put the dishes in and put the soap in, and then I just turn a dial. I don't need Siri. You're not needed, Siri.
You got to get the Roomba to load the dishwasher for you. That's
exactly.
That's pretty clear there.
But Will does have a point in terms of the more stuff we connect, all these Internet of Things, all these IoT devices, the more stuff we connect, the more vulnerable you do leave yourself for hacking. So just keep that in mind when you're bringing any type of anything technology into your home. I will say I do like. I've had a Roomba that did not have Wi-Fi, and now I have some sharks that have Wi-Fi and do the mapping. When the mapping is done correct, because that's another skill that can be a bit wonky. When the mapping is done correct, it is very helpful for things like I'm sitting here working, I can use the app and I can just send it to the bedroom or send it to wherever and I don't have to worry about it. So that is a use case where I quite enjoy that. And my motto is we're being tracked all the time anyway. So, like, to me, it's like, yeah, I got nothing to hide.
We carry
like,
a phone, so
we have smart speakers, we have computers in our pockets. Like, so to me, it's not an issue. Like, it's not a camera shooting at my face, as far as I know.
What's this
from the
what's the doomsday what's the doomsday scenario? What like Amazon police show up with guns?
The crap out of you at night?
Yeah, they show up with the guns. They're like, no, they live on the second floor. It's the room on the right. We know, we have the data.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, that's the
you say
that's
that.
true. Like,
but the leader of Al-Qaeda was just recently turned into steak cubes because they knew exactly where he was in the house and followed his patterns.
Like, and the dagger thing.
With our phone anyway.
That was an excellent use of the technology, getting a very, very evil man, but I don't want that happening to me. So, I mean, maybe just don't be evil.
Did he have a Roomba?
What does Bezos decide is evil?
Guys,
he was riding his Roomba around the house, and that's how they knew.
Yeah. He shouldn't have been standing on above.
I watch a lot of Dateline, and I know that if you carry your phone with you around your house, guess what? They know everywhere you've been. All the steps, baby. So it is just something else to think about. That's all.
All right. Well, here's something to think about. I'm just going to play a little something. We can watch this and then react in horror as this young chess prodigy is playing a robot, and then he goes to move one of his pieces when it's not quite his turn, and the robot grabs his hand and won't let go, and broke his finger.
Sorry, was I laughing out loud?
Is this Judgment Day? Is this Terminator Judgment Day, the beginning of it all? Right here.
Well, he'll learn not to grab something when a robot's not done with it.
Okay, recognize who is stronger and has no conscience. So it's described as being something out of Black Mirror meets Queen's Gambit. Chess-playing robot broke its 7-year-old opponent's finger. Of course, obviously, it wasn't educated on Asimov's 3 laws of robotics there. Yeah, I mean, it's just more of a clickbaity kind of story. They're not sure exactly what went wrong, but I imagine that robot is going to be taken out back and something happened to it.
The line of the whole thing, though, is the robot broke the child's finger. This is, of course, bad. Way to go, Mr. Lazarus. That was
it's going to be flipping burgers next week.
Yeah, that's right. In Soviet Russia, chess robot plays you.
Yes.
Yeah. It was the robotic equivalent of "listen here, you little shit." So,
not true. You think you're a prodigy?
I'll show you prodigy. Can you prodigy without a thumb?
Change the pitch up. Anyway, sorry.
If you have something to add, Greg, before we move on?
I was just on the prodigy note. There we go. This is Keith Prodigy. Anyway, please carry on.
Okay. So if that young lad should take a turn for a worse and should the worst happen, he ends up dying, then maybe scientists could use him to grip small objects like they're currently doing with dead spiders.
No.
The rise of necrobiotics is at hand. Think of bio-inspired and bio-hybrid robots, whereby you can engage the system inside. It's kind of like, have you ever been cleaning a crab, getting the meat out of a crab or a lobster, and then some of the inside bits you can move around and it makes the claws open and close. Same kind of thing what's going on here, using their flexor muscles, this spider's flexor muscles. And for those either have concerns about killer robots or not so much fans of spiders themselves, I should have issued a trigger warning because now we're showing spiders and biceps.
Hello. This took a turn.
Oh, there's a sexy.
Ooh, someone's been working out.
So we've seen stories about biomimicry in the past, whereby scientists have examined in great detail, like the pads of a gecko's feet, for example, to see how they manage to stick to walls and crawl up them and whatnot. This is taking kind of this to and being able to replicate that with synthetic materials. This is taking this to another level where they're actually using the dead organic animal and,
No,
and just
no,
doing stuff with
Sam.
syringes and whatnot to activate and pick stuff up. I mean, we have those. If you ever have any elderly people in your life that have those little claw devices with the handle that they can pick stuff up off the floor, it could be the next thing you get a large enough dead spider, maybe a tarantula or something, and you could. It's probably more eco-friendly than having something made out of plastic and metal. Thoughts, Gray? Is this our robot spider future?
The spiders themselves are biodegradable, so we're not introducing a big waste stream, which can be a problem with more traditional components. Yes, using the dead to accomplish tasks because we want to recycle. Absolutely genius.
We've solved climate change.
We wonder how we get to like, you look at things like Doom and Warhammer 40K, and you're like, what sick son of a thought this up? And then you realize that they grow up and become scientists. Phenomenal. I mean, it's impressive. Like this thing, can open and close 1,000 times. It can lift 130% of its body weight. Like absolutely brilliant.
And dog, you can use a spider to pick up another spider.
Yeah. So I mean,
Why?
it's horrifying. Like it's amazing, but it's also horrifying. So nothing's right. I'm torn. That's pretty much what I got.
Yeah, no, ma'am. It's a hard no.
Nope.
Thank you very much.
It's hard. Hard now? Fine.
Yeah.
Appreciate
I think that'd be
everybody's
great-
effort on that.
great for
And I
Halloween.
respect the sciences and I respect what these researchers are doing. I'm gonna have to just pass on that. Thank you so much. I'm gonna have
Well, we
nightmares
all-
now. What the hell? Like how that researcher didn't scream when
What we want now is a spider
And
robot,
not.
a dead spider robot breaking children's fingers, and that's
No.
Tasia, here's the scenario. You're stuck in a car, and the firefighter goes, just grab onto the spider.
Yeah. Is this what we're doing instead of Jaws of Life? It's gonna be a giant spider.
And you get
I'm good.
arachnophobes, and they're like, no,
Like,
Pretty good ride.
that's one from Lord of the Rings.
I'm good in
Where's the
here.
Harry Potter?
You can just bring me food. I'm good. I don't need to go out there. I'm in here.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of robots, we all know that birds aren't real. Well, there's a new app that can identify 458 bird species by their song. So I believe this came out in April. We've been hanging on to this for a while, so we could do a little what's a speed run of animal-related stories here. But the Cornell Lab of Ornithology has created something called the Merlin Bird Id App, and it's available for free. And I actually downloaded it a few weeks ago and used it to identify some bird that was very insistent outside our window, and it did a remarkable job. So it's using machine learning and all the AIs, all the things that we talk about regularly here on Momentous Live, and it compares to other samples out there and can tell you within a certain degree of accuracy what likely that bird is likely to be. They also have a visual identification component to the app as well, and it's super cool. It's the kind of thing I'm actually going to get my mother-in-law onto because she's got all sorts of bird feeders, and they've got basically a whole aviary outside their house. Well, there's an ongoing turf war between the small birds and the squirrels, of course, who have been thwarted by their various anti-squirrel technology involved in the bird feeders. But they're like the bottom feeders down around, just like going through the scraps. But this is a super neat, cool app, which is, like I said, available for free from the Apple App Store. And there's a Google Play Store. It has the Android version as well. So I'm just going to quickly go through these stories and then just check in with each of you on which stories you may have thoughts on or anything that speaks to you. In a similar vein, there are some gardening apps. We're linking to an article in the show notes about some of the best gardening apps. This is the time of year, well, we're a couple months in now where people have been doing some gardening in their backyards. We've got different phases of the spring and summer, so there's still stuff you can plant now, but there's apps such as Leaf Snap that can tell you how to care for your plants, be they indoor or outdoor, Smart Plant Home, iNaturalist, and others. And then, of course, there's for the skeptics out there, you can read this article on how useful can bug, plant, and bird ID apps really be, which the caveat being, we should all be a little skeptical of these things and not totally rely on them for things like identification. But, what you can do is see the answer it gives you, then cross-reference it with some Google search and go, yeah, that actually looks like the thing I'm seeing or sounds like the bird I'm hearing. So just again, we always like to offer different perspectives on some of the neat things that we talk about. In semi-related news, is a Dutch company creating networks of connected sensors to combat poaching. And friend of the show, Belinda, sent this to me a couple of weeks ago. And this kind of falls into our momentous good bucket, whereby we're using some of these IoT technologies, Internet of Things technologies, to help track these animals, in this case, African elephants, and keep an eye on where they are and being able to tell when there are interactions with poachers, for example, and help protect these species. And similarly, while we're talking about elephants, one of their early relatives, early ancestors, mammoths. Well, there's a whole baby mammoth found about a month and a half ago in North America, the first intact mammoth found in North America, really remarkable. And this is one of the pros of climate change and global warming, is we're getting this stuff being coughed up by the glaciers, and we're, how far are we from Jurassic Park now? Scientists have been talking for years about actually being able to recreate woolly mammoths by, if you can get harvest some DNA and inject it to remove the nucleus from an elephant egg, inject the DNA in there, and do their science magic, whatever they call it. And
wasn't that
maybe
CRISPR?
Well, yeah, that's all part. That all helps as well. So there's some remarkable. It's kind of sad. There's poor baby woolly mammoth, but also fascinating in a way. We may see mammoths in wildlife reserves in some day, and that's something. Is that the kind of thing should we be doing? Are we just setting ourselves up for another Jurassic Park? Maybe we can grind them up and eat them. Something like this startup that wants us to eat ground up chicken bones to help reduce the environmental impact of eating meat. And I am all for this. Bone broth is a huge thing, but why not grind up chicken bones and put them in your smoothies with your athletic greens and the like. So on those handful of stories there, let's start with you, Tasia. Which of these kind of speaks to you, or might you be concerned about?
Well, I've read a lot of the stuff about scientists wanting to bring back certain species that are extinct, and that they're getting very close to doing that. And the woolly mammoth is one of them. That's a bit concerning, because while I think that's very cool, like all you need is like a skosh of DNA, and that's a technical term. They just need like a skosh.
Yeah.
And then they can, perhaps bring back something that's extinct. I think that would creep me out, unless we're using it for something that, like, it's maybe something that's gonna go extinct, or like that's still here that like maybe we could save somehow, that's going to like benefit an entire like ecosystem. I don't know how I feel about bringing something back that's already extinct just so that we can like stare at it in captivity. It's a little bit upsetting to me.
Well, what if we could take a field trip to the Yukon, where they found this whole baby woolly mammoth, and maybe they could have like a free range reserve for them. Would that be okay? So not a zoo, not the Bronx Zoo per se, but just like Lost World, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, all those things.
Poor thing. I don't know, man. It's like, isn't Earth too hot now? Look at this little bugger. It's this cutie little.
It's nice and cool on the moon.
Oh. Yeah, we'll just put them on the moon. There you go.
Gray, what you thought of these half dozen stories here, animal related, and anything jump out at you that you'd like to comment on?
To be honest, the gardening one's actually pretty cool. I think Ray did actually a fairly decent job of creating a garden in downtown Vancouver. We couldn't bring it with us because it is a Japanese pine beetle area. So all of our stuff had to stay behind. So she's actually literally just today in the process of some spider plants that are going into a few plant pots around here, and I think bring back the gardening piece. I can't keep anything alive to save my life, so it's I've got the cat and the dog, and that's about it. So I'd like to see maybe this could help. I think I've got a. Oh yeah.
Well, that actually speaks to. I mean, you admit that you have to keep. That's good. But an app like this, like I'm the same way. Like I look at a plant, it's like, well, I guess it needs light and water, but sometimes there's more to it than that. And if you can't identify things, like our better halves seem to be doing a better job at, if you were able to use an app like LeafSnap, which can identify, kind of like the Merlin ID app for birds. This LeafSnap can identify plants when you take snap a picture of it, and then it will tell you things like the recommended watering frequency, any kind of other nutrients or, that it might need, daylight, and the like. Because sometimes we can accidentally overwater stuff. So
Yes.
Gray, you and I might be in the same camp here and could actually use this because and you mentioned, I saw Ray's post the other day about looking for spider plant babies, and I was going to offer, because we've got a couple spider plants on the ground going crazy, and I thought, I was going to be a big hero and help out, and then I saw like there's already 3 or 4 people. So does everyone have spider plants is that a COVID thing?
Might be. So our friend Lisa King dropped one off, and so it's up in the bedroom now. Very happy with it.
Beautiful. And maybe you can wire it up and use it to pick things up off the floor.
Good callback.
Will, how about you of these sort of strange and interesting scientific animal-related stories? Any of these speak to you or spark concern?
Yeah, I'm with Tasia. There was a few years back, I listened to a Radio Lab on CRISPR, which was the technology that they were going to use to do some of these Freaky Friday swaps, where they were going to turn a elephant into a mammoth and a tiger into a saber-toothed tiger, or whatever they were going to do. And I as a result, I read some stuff on it as well. This was a number of years ago, so I've forgotten most of it now. Super interesting technology, and there are a lot of use cases for CRISPR that could be really beneficial, like in medical sciences and things like that. But you do get into some of these freaky things, like, do we need a woolly mammoth, or is it, to quote Jurassic Park, you're too busy thinking whether you could do something and you didn't think if you should do something. So it's one of those things. Having said that, it's kind of cool to find a discovery like this, learn more about woolly mammoths. But as Tasia said, it's like, do we need woolly mammoths? I hate to say it, but there might have been a reason why some of these things went extinct, and this is what Jurassic Park kind of says, like, how do we coexist with these things? We just tried to make it because we're like, hey, this is cool. We got science. Science is awesome. We should do some cool stuff with it. Whereas you don't necessarily think of the ethics or the practicality of doing things.
To be fair, they could be delicious, so maybe we should give it a go.
There you go.
Note, recently, back in June, someone discovered online you can buy multi-purpose meat cushions, raw and cooked, now available for ravenous Monster Hunter fans. So if you're a fan of the Monster Hunter video game series, you can now order a cushion shaped like raw or cooked meat that you could snuggle up to at night, or when you're gaming on your phone, or you could just sit with it on your lap or under your knees.
Those games
quick round
are
robin.
so popular and have been popular for like 20 years.
Okay, Will, raw or cooked? Quick.
Oh, cooked.
Gray, raw or cooked?
Raw.
Okay. Tasia, are you going to have a raw or cooked cushion? Cooked? All right.
Cooked.
I think I'll do the raw. Good. It's sort of like steak tartare, because you could always cook it later if you want. You can't uncook something very easily.
There you
Now,
go.
if some of these meat cushions, for some, you should not eat, but if you do and they upset your stomach, hopefully you've stayed away from public water parks.
Oh boy.
Because apparently some people who have contagious gastrointestinal conditions, let's say, sometimes they go to water parks. Children can be little petri dishes of wonderfulness. They say if you or your children do play in water parks, don't let the water go in your mouth, because the CDC, the Disease Control, says, because you could get the poops.
Like, can we just talk about, like, be a decent human? If you have the shits, don't go to a public pool or fountain. Like, I'm so tired of people. You know what I'm saying? Like, Lord,
you know what? I have diarrhea. Let's go to a public pool.
Yes. We could just follow one. If we could learn one thing, we have been trapped for years. If we could learn one thing, okay? Everybody just agree to one thing.
What, you're not up for some feculent fun?
Yeah. I appreciate the alliteration.
So,
However, I just think if you've got the running stomach, you stay home. You understand?
the
You run
last
to the
phrase does it.
bathroom.
That's Taco Bell's motto. The last phrase does it. Don't get in the water of sick with diarrhea. Don't stand or sit above the jets because getting an enema from the it's kind of, what are you doing? And don't swallow the. Yeah.
Yes, it's perfect. That sentence is perfect.
So, in case you're wondering why it's not particularly safe, is that water parks, or in this case, they call them splash pads, and which is just strange in itself. But because they do not feature generally a lot of standing water, they do not have the same regulations as pools do, where they have to have a certain level of chlorine and whatnot to ensure that the water is sanitized on an ongoing basis. So that water in water parks just gets circulated over and over again. Who knows how much it's filtered or sanitized whatsoever. Hence the opportunity for these sort of pathogens to make us sick. So just a little, it's been pretty hot the last week or so. We had a heat spell in June here in the Vancouver area. And of course, down in Arizona, Tasia, it's hot all the time. So if you're going to a water park yourself or with your kids, preferably with your kids, otherwise people might look at you funny. Just don't drink the water. That's our public service and our momentous public service announcement for August 9th, 2022.
You can't have nice things.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on to some picks of the week. First, Tasia, did you come up with anything?
No, I don't have a pick of the week this week.
Boo. Okay, so we should have like a cone of shame or something for somebody, for anyone who doesn't manage
filter?
to.
You can put it on.
But Will has something. Will, you watched something in the last week that you seemed to enjoy. What was that?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a tough one. So I'll say I watched it, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was amazing. It's very well done. Pixar's movie Lightyear, which is partly based off of Toy Story's character Buzz Lightyear, originally voiced by Tim Allen. And this is what the toy from the Toy Story movie was based off. So the Buzz Lightyear toy, this is the movie that supposedly sparked it. Now, I did enjoy the movie, but I do have to say the premise was a little weak. It didn't seem like this would be a movie that would be made in 1995 and that a kid in 1995 would love. But I enjoyed it as an adult. So it's one of these tough things that I liked the movie. That character that was just on screen, the cat, is like one of my favorite characters in the history of cinema. It's such an awesome character. So I would recommend it, but if you're looking for a sequel to Toy Story, or you really care about how this ties into Toy Story, this is not the movie for you. If you've never seen Toy Story, see this one first.
It gives you a little bit of backstory. Now, I hope this isn't spoiler territory necessarily, but my understanding initially when seeing the trailers is that this was about the real life astronaut that inspired the toy by Buzz Lightyear. But then I heard something that wasn't exactly the case, that there's actually another meta level to that.
Yeah.
Is that the case? Okay.
Well, I don't think this is huge spoilers because they have been trying to put this out, and it's in like the first 2 seconds of the movie. And this is one of my complaints is, so the idea is not that this is the real person, but there was a movie in 1995 that Andy, the boy in Toy Story, saw and wanted the toy from. It was a popular action adventure movie. This movie
Toy Story is the
doesn't
merch
have
for
a
this movie.
Yeah. So the toy is the merch for this movie. Okay, that's not a great elevator pitch. And so people have been confused about what this movie is. So this actually was not a very well-performing movie in the cinemas because A, it was confusing, and B, people who are hardcore Disney Plus people are going to be like, it'll be on Disney Plus in a couple months, which is what we did. So nobody saw it in the cinemas. So there's this problem where this movie didn't perform well. It's a pretty good movie, but it was confusing about what it was, and nobody wanted to see it in the theaters if it was going to come out a month later.
Well, maybe someday they'll do another prequel about the real life astronaut that inspired the Buzz Lightyear movies, and they'll call it like Lightyear Origins or something like that.
Yes.
I like it. They should have Ryan Reynolds in it. At the end. Don't have him say anything.
Exactly, and he'll just be terrible, and they'll have to reboot him later. Gray, you've got a little something as a pick of a week for us that we talked about last year. And speaking of confusing, this confused our friend of the show, Jamie Reynolds, who appears with us once in a while, because why is it yellow and why does it have a crank? You have your play date in hand, so tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is a delightful little system from Panic. They make some really cool software. It's just kind of picking up my green screen well here, which is kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool. So it's this brilliant little system that you can program using C, or you can program using their web tool. And so I've actually got new games waiting for me here. So if I tap on the corner, this beautifully high reflective screen is just absolutely incredible to play with. The crank is not to charge it. It's actually an interaction mechanism. And so right now I've got, so let's see if we can see it here, 2 new games. And there's one called Crankin' Time. I got to focus on there. Let's see if we can do it. Focus lock.
We're doing it live. It's good enough.
There you go.
Oh, there it is.
Look at
Perfect.
that. That's my Opal C1. I can focus in real time. So what do we have here? We've got Boogie Loops and Crankin' Time Travel Adventures. 2 new games I haven't played yet. It's going to download these for me, and I'll be able to play them soon. And that's really, really neat. The one thing that I really like about this as well is that, let's turn the focus lock off. One thing I really like about this as well is that writing games for this, you can do through a web browser. If you want to do like a text-style adventure game, like LucasArts and that sort of thing. Or you can also use their software development kit. So I started writing a few little text adventure game concepts that I had back when I was a kid, back when LucasArts games were kind of the thing. So I'm going to see if I can actually put together a little momentous game.
Cool.
It should be fun.
I love the very crisp 1-bit display there, just the pure black and white. It's got old Apple Newton message pad vibes, or original Palm Pilot vibes, or even like original Macintosh computer vibes there. Very nice, clean, crisp. No backlight, however. Has that been an issue for you so far?
It hasn't. As long as you got some ambient light, this thing picks it up, and it picks it up like you would not believe. So very, very impressed with the quality of the screen. They're currently pre-ordered out to 2023. This was sitting across the border waiting for me, and a friend of the show, Mike Egerbo, went and picked it up for me. So right back home. This is the removable cover that you can get for it. And you can also get, it's coming soon, a desktop Bluetooth speaker that this will sit on the front of that also is a pen holder. And it comes with a very pretty pen. There you go.
Very cool. Well, looking forward to seeing it in person. Oh, actually, one more thing. You want to refresh everyone about the model of this? You get like a 1-year game subscription, and how often are new games released?
Yeah, so basically every 2 weeks, season 1, and I don't think it's a full year. I think it's
Okay.
I think it's about half the year, but every 2 weeks you get 2 new games. So that's what's included here. They've already started working on season 2, where they said they're going to do a slightly different model. But the idea here is that everyone's playing the same games at the same time. The challenge is, like, when you got your device, there was no launch date because they've just had such trouble in trying to get all of the components. They actually had to go with a completely different processor for the second run of these, which is just same capabilities, but so basically you can do one of 2 things. In your account, you can get caught up to where everybody is, or you can follow the same 2-week cycle and basically follow the same path of discovery as everyone else. But the second season, it looks like it might be a little bit more successful to do that way. I've also seen a lot of people that are also releasing games that you can sideload very easily. USB-C on the bottom, headphone jack, amazingly loud speakers on something this big. So yeah, just a cool little, very open system. Designed by people that don't typically make hardware. It was designed in conjunction with Teenage Engineering, the folks who make a lot of the synthesizers. So really neat stuff.
And Panic, a longtime Mac developer, did the software development, right? And it's even got Panic Purple in that case.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Again, looking forward to seeing that one in person. We can nerd out. My pick of the week is, speaking of nerding out, is after an inordinate amount of research, as I tend to do, for a mobile solution to help with live streaming and other work. I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person who likes to have multiple screens when working. I've got a triple setup at home, the iMac flanked by another two 27-inch monitors. And one of the things when you're on the road with a 13-inch screen, like I've got the MacBook Air, it's like, oh, it's a little cramped, and it can affect your productivity, right? So after looking at various options out there and assessing the compatibility, especially with the M1 processor, as some of you might know, only supports one external screen. We've got the Xebec line, and this is the tri-screen that I picked up, and it does one screen through the standard USB, and then it uses DisplayLink, which is, I believe, is an Intel technology, and I already had the software installed for it when I have my external monitors at the office, and that actually lets you do another monitor through HDMI. So you can have an HDMI monitor and a USB monitor going simultaneously with no drop in frame rate or anything. It's remarkable. It's kind of a bit of a workaround. So it's a bit of to get past the limitation of the M1 processor's native support for external monitors. And I got to say, like, it's when you see their screenshots and their video clips, it looks very simple and elegant. Once you get all the cables plugged in, as you see here, it's a little less clean. They're actually in that one shot that just came up. There's missing one cable and one kind of big dongle for the HDMI adapter. If you have to do one USB, one HDMI. If you were using this on an M2 based device or an M1 Pro or M1 Max based device, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, then you could probably do both via USB-C, and then you wouldn't need the extra cable as well. But there are other offerings out there that don't support DisplayLink, but because I'm on the M1, I went with the DisplayLink option. Like this in Xebec, they've got a Canadian store, US store, they're US based. There are a lot of options that you can get on Amazon from random Chinese companies that seem to have all sorts of very strange names that seem to be kind of selling the same thing. That's a bit of the wilderness of Amazon at times. So I narrowed it down to a couple of companies that seemed to be North America based, that had support and had good reviews too. Like the other thing is like trying to find reviews that weren't actually just fake reviews. And this I think that my two screens here, they're just 10-inch screens. But the color, I mean, they're slightly washed out. The color matching isn't super great, but you get the extra real estate, and the main thing is the aid in productivity. I'm not doing like advanced color matching work here, like in Photoshop, or I'm not doing like print design. But anyway, so that's my pick of the week, the Xebec tri-screen. And they have they slide out. It's a bit bulky, and there's a single screen version, and then I've got the dual screen version because symmetry for the win.
Yes.
And we got a couple of projects from the team this week. And let's start with Will. You got some new beats for us, Will.
I do. So this is another looper. I just keep on cranking them out. It's my passion, making beats every day. And this is Level Up 13. Just this series is more about variety of BPMs and genres. There's a little bit of trap, a little bit of do you like that one?
Bubonic fade.
Yeah, bubonic fade.
Yeah.
And
Spatiosaurus Rex. Oh boy, I love your titles. How do you do those titles, Will?
Yes. It's different genres, different VPMs, everything from about 80 BPM to 180. Trap, hip hop, lo-fi, good times.
Awesome. And where can people find your latest beats?
So Table Beats app, search for Molotov. This is tabeless.net. Actually, I'm assuming it'll be in the show notes. And this is actually a web looper, but tabeless.net also has an app. I have a little birdie told me that they might be improving their app soon, which would be super awesome. And they're investing in some of their technology, so that would be great. So check it out, tabeless.net or Table Beats.
Nice. Tasia, you're relentless. You've got another video for us this week. We love it.
Another video.
What's this one about?
It was like a double header. It was intense. This one is the Pixel 6a camera review. and features.
Nice.
So I'm going over I do a big test and I'm going over like all the features, what I think are the best features, and how I think the camera compares to, like the 5A or the 6 Pro and that kind of thing. So
Where can we find it?
youtube.com/Tasia Custodi.
There you go.
And what should people do when they get there and watch it? After they watch it, what should they do?
You should smash that like button. I've never said that. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
You're one of those now.
Smash that like
Set you
button.
up.
Or do you say smash the subscribe button? I'm not really sure which one you're supposed to
Smash
smash.
everything. Hulk
Just
smash.
smash all the things,
Yeah.
Except the dislike button. If you
No.
touch that button,
It tracks you. She
Kitten
knows where
dies.
you live.
every time you touch that button, a kitten dies. Okay? So
We're gonna send over a robot spider
a
Roombas.
spider will come get you.
Pass.
And
Powered
if
by
you
Amazon.
if you like smashing things, you can find us at momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv, and on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/TJMJutra because reasons, and you can find the Momentous playlists there. Thank you, Tasia, Will, Gray, and anyone else who might be left out there. We hope your week is truly momentous.